feel like we're going to change things up a little bit and talk about America for a few minutes. Imagine you run a manufacturing operation and you distribute your products all over the world. How many of you would hire a felon in this operation? How about a recovering addict? How about somebody who's never been able to keep a job? My guess is not many of you, and frankly, before I started working in my current job, I wouldn't have hired addicts or felons either. I spent 15 years working in marketing and business development in the private sector, where I was always focused on hiring the best, most trustworthy candidates. But today, I work at a place called Women's Bean Project. We hire women with felonies, often several to their name, who have long histories of addiction and who haven't had a job longer than a year in their lifetime. Their average age is 38. One might say we hire the worst workers rather than the best. Women's Bean Project has two manufacturing businesses. One makes gourmet food products, which started with bean soup and is the genesis of our name. The other makes handmade jewelry. And then we've just started another business doing piecework for other companies. And even though the products sales are about 3/4 of our operating budget, the products really aren't what's important about our business. What's important about our business is the women. We hire women who need to learn workplace norms, like coming to work every day and on time, taking direction and paying attention to detail. We hire women who need to learn life skills like problem solving, goal setting, and budgeting. And after 9 months, they graduate and move to career entry-level jobs in the community where they can advance, prosper, and often feel valued for the first time in their lives. My involvement with the Bean Project began as a volunteer. I was fascinated with the business model. I loved that the more product we sold, the more women we could serve. And so 12 years ago, I made the transition from volunteer to CEO, which I fully recognize is not a normal career pattern. During my first week at the Bean Project, I thought it was important to get to know how the products were made. So I started out by observing the 10-bean soup production line. Tony's 10-bean soup was our original product 26 years ago and is still our bestseller today. So I stood there and watched the production line for a few minutes and then decided to hop in and put a hairnet and gloves on to start to do the production. And you can see that all of our processes are manual. So you start out with a bag in your hand that has a funnel inside, and you have to kind of hold it just right, and a scoop in the other hand, and then you move down the production line on these hip-high tables. So I got on the line. I remember there was a Motown song playing, and we were swaying to the music and scooping and swaying and scooping and scooping. And 9 times I scooped, and then I thought, wait a second, shouldn't there be 10 beans in Tony's 10-bean soup? Well, it turns out there should have been 10 beans in Tony's 10-bean soup, but that day they only brought out 9 bins and filled them with beans, and nobody had noticed. So I pointed out to the ladies on the production line that it turns out that when you make food, the product in the package actually has to match the labels. But nobody seemed really bothered because we were going to just pour all those beans into a big bin to maybe be used later. It didn't really bother anybody that this had happened. One woman even said, well, it's fine, we'll just make more later this afternoon. So imagine trying to run a manufacturing operation in this context. How can you operate a business that a half day's work is for nothing? Another time, we made a large batch of brownies. We made the mix for a corporate customer who was sending packages to several hundred of their clients all over the country. A few days after our product started to arrive, we got feedback that our brownies were salty. And first we thought people must have baked those brownies with salted butter. I mean, really, how salty could they be? But we just got too many complaints. So we decided to pull one of the packages from our warehouse and bake them. Well, I'm always the first in line to taste the brownies, quality control and everything. So these brownies looked perfect. The rise was great. There was crispy crust on the top, and they looked really chewy and gooey. And then I took a bite, and a weird taste sensation overtook my mouth because it wasn't consistent at all with what I expected. Those brownies were salty. After rapid investigation, we sat down with a woman named Anita who had made the mix that day. And it turns out that Anita finally admitted that when it came down to putting the various ingredients into our big mixer, she'd kind of gotten confused because sugar and salt both start with an S, and she'd lost track of how much of each the recipe called for. Then we discovered that Anita was illiterate. And I was flabbergasted. How could she conduct herself? How could she take the bus to work every day or buy things in the grocery store without being able to read? And she thought I was just as strange because she said, I don't need to know how to read. I know the bus routes. I can get to work every day and get to where I want just fine. And the idea of reading labels in a grocery store seemed totally foreign to her. Well, imagine trying to run a business with costly mistakes and illiterate employees. About a year into my work, we had a woman who was only coming to work 30% of the time. And when we sat down with her, she said, well, I thought this was a program. I didn't know I had to come to work. Well, in fact, neither the business or the mission can exist without each other. We do not exist to make bean soup, yet we can't exist without it. But some days it feels like the business and the mission are working at cross purposes, kind of in this weird codependent relationship. 26 years ago, Women's Bean Project was founded with the idea that teaching women to work while actually working was the cure for poverty. The reaction from our community when we first started was amusement and thinking that it was a great idea, but nobody really thought it would amount to much. So initially, we had no problem getting local stores to carry our products. As a business, we were always at risk of being unable to fulfill orders, of making big and costly mistakes, and frankly, of losing large amounts of money. And I would say in the beginning, we were a mission that happened to have a business. We created for ourselves an atmosphere in which we weren't always taken seriously. Even I haven't always been taken seriously. I've been asked whether or not I get paid to do my job, or whether or not it's a hobby versus a full-time. But in the long run, we realized that being a mission with a business wasn't sustainable. Eventually, to survive, we had to become much more business-minded. We had to document processes, understand our true costs of goods, get safety certifications, and communicate clearly the impact of the products on our mission work. And maybe most importantly, we had to defend ourselves as being a going concern. We really had to become a real business with an infrastructure and documentation and protocols. We had to learn that we had to take the business just as seriously as a mission. And along the way, we shifted our mantra from support our mission to sales create jobs. This transformation has taught me that the more we treat ourselves like a business, the more we require the systems and the processes it takes to run a multi-million-dollar company, the more the phone rings with prospective customers, the more there's acceptance and momentum for what we do. And so today, 26 years later, we're no longer trying to prove we have worth. Instead of only a few local stores carrying our products, today you can find us in 1,000 stores across the country, including this holiday season in 250 Walmart stores. No one is asking me now if I get paid to be the CEO of a multi-million manufacturing operation. And instead of just thinking that our mission to train chronically unemployed women is sweet, they take us seriously. And so our increased focus on running a better business has also allowed our mission to grow. By being clear that sales create jobs, we can translate for our retail partners how many jobs their orders create. By volunteering in our company, these partners have a much better sense of what we do, and they provide pro bono support and other kinds of support that never would have been possible without a strong business relationship. I think Women's Bean Project is emblematic of what's happening in social enterprise today, and frankly, what's occurring across all businesses. Today, companies like Walmart and Starbucks are calling companies like Women's Bean Project to explore ways of working together. Companies like Women's Bean Project have a seat at the table with big businesses because we've found a way to operate a company with solid business principles and do good at the same time. Now people listen when I say that for every dollar a social enterprise like Women's Beam Project spends, the return on investment to society is $2.23. Now people listen when I say that our graduation rate is 80% and our job placement rate is 100%, and a year later up to 100% of these women are still employed. And I can do that because we measure them. Now people listen when I say that all of our products are lovingly handmade and have no preservatives in them. They listen, but more importantly, they buy. And the more they buy, the more good we can do. And I say this after we've just hired our largest group of program participants ever, due in large part to receiving our largest order ever. At the Beam Project, we've discovered that our mission succeeds when the business is strong. And the sands are shifting in the same direction for everyone involved in social enterprise. In other words, the smarter we become about our business, the wider our impact can be. This shift that the Beam Project has made from a mission with a business to a business with a mission is a trend, not a blip. Today, I know that in many ways a social enterprise can become more like a business, become more business-minded and competitive. I also know it's not easy, and it involves a lot of patience and tenacity, and frankly, quite a bit of bootstrapping. We can partner with larger companies and then leverage their marketing to help tell our story about how our handmade products change women's lives. And we can run cost-conscious, effective businesses by having a strong handle on our cost of goods and services, and by being competitively priced and still deliver on our mission. While we are looking at the business world to emulate what they do well, they're looking at us to see how to do good. Only we have an advantage because our mission is baked into our DNA. It's our reason for being. And so we will continue to hire the most difficult employees, those who no one else will hire, and attempt to make them employable. Once our program participants learn to come to work, pay attention to detail, become reliable, then we help them transition out into the community where others can benefit from the work that we've done. And then, all the while, then we hire more women and we do the same thing over and over again, all the while trying to run a more efficient operation. A lot of people ask me if it's hard. And I can tell you that running a business with these constraints is probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But I think the more important question is it worth it? And to answer that question, I'd like to tell you about Gloria. Today, Gloria is healthy, her brown skin is clear, her smile is bright, and her eyes even twinkle. But when she arrived at Women's Beam Project, she was dangerously thin, her skin was blotchy, and her brown eyes were flat. Gloria had been unable to keep a job because she had no belief in herself or her abilities. Her abusive marriage had ended and her husband had taken their kids, leaving her with nothing. No money, no kids, no sense of self. After years of closet drinking and drug use and letting her husband determine the direction of her life, Gloria had to find her way on her own, alone and sober. On her first day, when she arrived at Women's Beam Project, when we hired her, she sat down with our case manager and said, "I've lost my voice." And our case manager looked into her eyes and just said, "I'm listening." Eventually, Gloria began to believe in herself. She began to treat herself with love and respect. Gloria graduated Women's Beam Project 12 years ago when a local company in Denver created a job for her. They totally took a chance and created a job for her at their front desk. 12 years later, Gloria still works at that company, only now she manages 5 women. She owns a home and a car and is on the verge of getting her college degree in December. Today, Gloria describes herself as a great communicator, a dear friend, and fabulous. What I know today is that despite all the challenges of running a social enterprise, giving second chances and believing in women can create powerful, life-changing results. 8 out of 10 women we hire graduate and move to career entry-level jobs in the community. And a year later, between 85 and 100% of those chronically unemployed women are still employed. The other day, I was approached by a woman named Grace Lee. We've just hired her a few weeks ago. Grace Lee is short, has close-cropped red afro, and Grace Lee is also homeless. She had been living on people's couches for a while, and we hadn't yet helped her find a place to live. And those situations on couches always ended poorly, as witnessed by the most recent experience with a man that turned abusive. Grace Lee had found a new couch, but she had left all of her belongings with that person. On her first day of work, her former roommate threw out all of her clothes. When our case manager found out about that, she took Grace Lee to the store to buy underwear, just so she could keep coming to work until she got her first paycheck. So the next morning, Grace Lee walked up to me and looked me in the eye and said, "Thank you. No one's ever been kind to me before. Thanks." I had to take a deep breath so that I could maintain eye contact and not cry, because I was overwhelmed by the enormity of that statement. No one has ever been kind to me before. So I asked you earlier to imagine running a business with the constraints I described. Imagine also feeling disempowered in every sense. Imagine living a life with no feeling of self-efficacy. Imagine being dehumanized by the criminal justice system and the human services system that's supposed to protect you. Now imagine finding a way to overcome all of these limitations through employment. Today I know that when women come to the Being Project, they are not the sum of their mistakes. They're not their felonies and addictions. They're mothers and wives and recovering addicts. And they've been abused and loved and, sure, made bad decisions. In their addictions, they were at their worst, abandoned, strung out, and hopeless. But by the time I meet them, they are full of possibility. Now keep in mind, what I'm referring to isn't just about jobs. It's about all the other things that come from gainful employment. Increased pride and confidence, the ability to set and work toward goals, the opportunity to provide financial and emotional support to one's family. And so imagine working in a business where a simple product like bean soup can change a life. Where at its most challenging, social enterprise is about finding the balance between the competing interests of the business and the mission. But at its most rewarding, it's a vehicle for transformational change. When Women's Bean Project grows sales, we can hire more women. When we hire more women, we change more lives. When we operate a strong business, our mission is stronger. Today, I know that when our business succeeds, our mission wins. And we all win. Now I ask you, who wouldn't want that? Thank you.